All right, good evening. Today I call this meeting to order on Thursday, March 16th at 7:04 p.m. Is member Debbie Yasik or Yasik here?
Yes.
All right.
Here.
Great. Is member Eileen Leahy present?
Present.
Okay, she's here. And myself, Keanu Smith-Brown Chair, is also here. We're going to move forward with the agenda. I don't believe there were any comments for tonight, so we're going to just move on forward to the approval of our minutes. Is there a motion to approve of these minutes? Thank you all so very much too for holding it down at our last meeting.
Well, first of all, are there any changes to the minutes? Because I have some changes
Oh, okay.
before
Well,
we
what-
make.
Sure. So is there, yeah, so what changes would you like? Are there a motion now?
So Debbie, see if you agree, down under the update of the amended reports, it says member Leahy provided an update on the campaigns with outstanding issues, and it lists 4, but we also discussed Ms. George's and Ms. Manthy's. Because they were outstanding,
Right.
so they need to be added.
Okay. They were the big ones, the main ones.
Right, so there were 6 of them, so it was
Yeah, okay.
those. I mean, I think we went through all of them briefly, but
We
those were the
did.
ones that were outstanding. So those 2 need to be done, and then I believe that from my perspective, the rest of it was okay.
Okay. Then is there a motion to update these minutes then for us to be able to approve of them?
Yeah, if Debbie, if you don't have any other changes.
Nope.
All right, well, I move to accept. Up there's
Yes, Madam Clerk.
Regina.
Here's Regina.
Okay, the reason why their names weren't there is because I listened to it, and for them specifically, you didn't give them anything that they had to do, but you noted in the minutes what the other people had to do. You know what I mean? Like you said, this person needed to do this, this, and this, and you were
Right.
just giving background on those 2.
Right, well, we updated all of them, so if you're saying the only 4 required. If you're saying that these are listed because action was needed, then I think the minutes need to reflect that.
Okay,
It wasn't that they were just updated then. I mean,
yeah, because I wasn't
updated-
there. That was the meeting Cindy sat in. I was just trying to
Right.
see.
Yeah, we did specifically go through each one, but some of them were okay.
Okay,
And others had been fixed, but others were still outstanding.
okay,
So Regina, how do you want us to phrase it then?
That's fine. We could just add them. I'll just add them to the
Yeah,
list.
because they were just all updated, yeah.
Okay,
Right.
So I make a motion that we accept the minutes with the changes noted by adding Friends of Katie George and Miss Manthy's campaign.
I second.
All right, all in favor of those changes?
I,
Aye.
All right, thank you. Thank you, Madam Clerk, for handling that. We're going to move forward with our updates. The first part of our updates for A, we have amended reports, the campaign fund report analysis, July 1st, 2022. Thanks, Eileen,
All right.
again, for all that you've done thus
we
far.
are
Please.
moving forward
Bit by bit.
bit by bit. I'm going to go a little out of order. I'm just going to go over the ones that we had outstanding issues with. So let me go by what we did, what this thing is here. So Friends of Fred Paone are all up to date. They submitted their report, so they are now compliant, which is great. And Friends of Rhonda Pindell Charles, there were 2 things, and one of them I think was an error in math on my part. So the math that seemed to be off is correct. I think it had to do with the crossing out that had occurred in one of the prior reports. So and she had submitted some other things, so that's compliant. The Friends of Rob Savage, he submitted the gifts in kind with the April entry that had been dropped from the month before, so he's compliant. Miss Manthy has paid her $250 fee and really just has a couple couple of little things that need to be submitted. It's just, they need to be done. It's just submitting a Schedule 3. Some of the names, the codes need to be added, and she doesn't have codes because they're transfers, but she doesn't have them in the transfer part. So that just needs to be done. There's some strike throughs and initialing that are missing, but we've skipped that with some other candidates, and just, that's kind of a nicety to have. But the fact that she handed in her late fee is great. And then I'm very happy to announce that the Friends for Katie George submitted their report. It is compliant. I checked it today. Submit the $250 late fee. And so
She
that
did?
closes that out. And then the last one, she did. She was
She
in
did?
town this week and was able to drop it off. So that's great. And then we have Friends of Keanu Smith Brown. And so I know that Keanu has been working on that. If you remember, showed a balance of $304. The amount is zeroed out. So I know that Keanu has been trying to find where the discrepancy is so that it can balance out and the fund amended and sent in. Keanu, are you at a point where you can say that you found the discrepancy, or should we just move forward?
We should move forward, but what I do want to do is I want to, if you're comfortable with this, I can share what I have in detail. I'll share the full list that I have of all my transactions, disbursements, my donations, and I'm going to continue working and figure out this discrepancy. And if you're willing to support, to also look through what I have just to make sure that I'm doing it the proper way. I am doing this on my own, of course. I want to make sure there's another eye looking at these, if not from my team.
Well, that's not something we would usually do in the meeting. I mean, we could.
Yeah, not in the meeting.
I
would send.
Yeah,
I would probably send this after.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that
I mean,
way
we could meet afterwards, but again, even with looking through all of those, we still have the responsibility of the actual report being sent in. I did contact Jared DeMoranis of the State Board of Elections to ask what might happen at the state level. And I heard back from him, but I'm not quite sure he understood what I was asking. So I've resent that email and given him a call. So, but I do feel like we have to put a time limit on this or make some firm arrangements so that we can, you've obviously been doing due diligence, but we have to really get this finished off separate from this meeting, I think.
Yes, for sure. Yes, please. I'm also the stand up late night trying to figure this out as well. I know it doesn't seem like it should be this much, but it is when you're actually looking at all these transactions. So I feel I can, whatever time at 15, 10 a week, I can send you this as soon as I have everything together. And of course, I'll be as transparent as possible, provide all of my documents that's needed, whatever we have to do so that I can resolve this, because I do not want this to continue to linger.
Right, because this particular report, it's been a year since it was submitted. Well, I'd like to make a motion that we ask this campaign to submit reports, even if it's a discrepancy, just submit an amended report within 30 days. So,
I'll second.
okay, and then.
All right. All in favor of that? A motion.
Aye.
And so, and then we'll just have to move forward in it, Keanu, if there's something needs to be discussed at the next meeting, I think we'll just have to have you recused, and then we'll take care of it. Regina, how is it, can we make it possible that I can meet with Keanu at some point and it's not a meeting because I'm really meeting with the campaign?
I think that's a better question for Ashley. Because, two members of your committee is a quorum.
Right.
So I think Ashley could better answer
Right.
that.
In the past, I've met with treasurers.
Right.
I
Yeah,
think
Keanu,
Johnny-
can you just send your treasurer to meet with Eileen? You meet with your treasurer, then have your treasurer meet with Eileen.
Yeah, I could see if someone from the team can, because I don't believe my current treasurer would be able to. That's why I've been doing this my own.
Okay.
Well, you can send me some of the information and I can look at it, but
Okay, I have it. So I finished today. I finished the spreadsheet listing all of my contributions, disbursements, fees from the 1st of February all the way up
okay.
until.
But have
the
these
last-
been compared? Right, and not to get into too much more of a discussion. What needs to
Sure.
happen is probably you need to go back to all of the reports because it's about the reports, not the spreadsheet. So the reports have to, so if this was something that was missed in, say, report number 3, that needs to be amended and then them all brought forward. So a spreadsheet needs to be compared to what was submitted in the reports.
Yes. So
So that,
I've used what I've used to do this was all of my bank statements and the reports. So I've been, going back and forth saying, okay, this was from this day. Okay, add it to this. So what I'll do, thank you.
okay, but the way the reports also work is, like, for instance, with receipts, you're supposed to put down when they were received, not necessarily when they show up in a statement. So that may be where you're missing things. So it's not from the bank statements, it's from as they come in. So send me that and then I'll take a look at it, but I need you to look at, or your treasurer to go back and look at those, look at the reports, because what you submitted is what we have as an official thing. And so my guess is, like I've said before, I think you probably missed a disbursement.
Okay.
You paid something out or actually had too much money, so we might have gotten a receipt. So it's hard to tell which one it is. So, all right. We can double check with Ashley when she comes on. All right, so we have 30 days. So, and then we'll just, can we then just send another? I hate to send another certified letter to Miss Manthe, but can we just send an email?
Yeah, I did yesterday, late afternoon, advise her that it still wasn't correct because they thought it was correct. When I looked, it looked okay to me as well. So I said, well, let me check with you to make sure, because the addresses were there, which were missing. So addresses were there. And then I know it was a little sloppy because they're transfers and they, the one was put in as a disbursement instead of a transfer. But addresses were there. The code was there for the true reimbursement. And then I thought transfers did not need a code.
Correct. But it's not in the transfer column. It's in the other
Right.
column.
They kind of drew lines, right? They drew arrows.
No, they didn't. They just need to fill it out correctly.
Okay.
Sorry, they just need to fill it out
Yeah.
correctly.
So I did tell her yesterday about 5 o'clock that it needed to be done, and it would be great if they could do it today, but I guess it wasn't done.
Right. Yeah.
Regina would know if it was done, I think. But I'll keep on that, Eileen.
I'd like to make this a 7-day, say, please get this in 7 days.
Okay.
So I make a motion that we email this Ms. Manthe and her treasurer and request that these be submitted within 7 days.
Okay. And just FYI, everybody, we start sending out the reminders for the next campaign fund report due July 1st at the end of April. So we send out a reminder April, May, and June, just because it takes people a long time to get them in. So just want to give you a heads up.
Thank you.
So there's a motion on the floor.
Is there a second for that motion? Debbie?
Okay.
I'll second.
All in favor of that motion for that 7-day notice? for
Aye.
Monica?
All right, so we have only two more. And we'll definitely get these done by
Agreed.
the next meeting.
I'm one of the first to be done. Okay. Moving forward with the agenda, thank you all again. Move forward with the agenda. We have our task force to study the city municipal election laws. The elections laws. All right,
Um,
so
So the task force has its first meeting scheduled for next Wednesday, March 22nd. It will be via Zoom. All 5 members have been notified, and I believe all 5 have responded that they can meet. It's been set up with the city for it to be filmed, so it's an open meeting and will be on YouTube. The agenda's gone out. The interim chair, Ian Pfeiffer has been asked to be the interim chair to move the meeting forward. And a couple of other things are just kind of outstanding. One is, we did talk about putting together a list of materials to forward to the group ahead of time, but I was counseled that we needed to wait until the committee requested them. So I have put together that list. That's why I haven't sent anything out to you all. But I've included a list of things such as the election priorities that have been identified in the past, the work sessions that were done for both past elections, the Charter Revision Commission report, the election reports, the election task force resolution. There's a list of links to some other boards of elections and also the municipal league that Debbie had identified. And I think one of the things too that I was glad to see is the state of Maryland's Board of Elections has issued a new summary guide. And the last one we had been using was 2017. So this is a 2022 one. So there is a number of materials that they can look at, and hopefully at that meeting, I'll be able to let them know that this has been put together and have available to them if they would like. Is there anything other than that, Regina?
Yeah.
Basically at the meeting, the mayor's going to have them take their oath of office to start. And we're going to, since they're a new committee, we're going to have them, learn how to use the Zoom and give them the information on who to contact if they have any issues and things like that. And Ashley's going to come on the meeting for a few minutes to talk about Open Meeting Act and the posting of the agendas and, and people being together in groups and having a quorum constitutes a meeting. So she's going to speak to them about those issues. And myself and Hillary are going to be on the meeting because Hillary is going to be kind of handling the agendas, but Eileen is the ex officio non-voting member that you guys appointed to the committee. So if they need materials that they request, she would notify me and we'll make sure that they have them for their next meetings. And I think that's about all for that. And they're going to have discussions. So we're just going to see what happens after that point.
Okay, so we want to then, after that first meeting, I know we discussed, so after that first meeting, it would be, of course, Eileen asking when she's there as an ex officio member about sharing with them some priorities or thoughts that we have in mind. That's when it would be appropriate and welcome. So when would be best for us to discuss these priorities as a board to agree upon them and say, okay, hey, these are the priorities that us as a board would like to share with the task force. When would be the best time for us to discuss that before their second meeting, since the first meeting won't be focused on this just yet?
Well, the committee can guide their meeting the way that they want to do it. If you want them to send any communications to them, you can do that. And I think you should do that in the form of a memo or through Eileen.
Okay, so indeed. And so then you two, Eileen and Debbie, not for this meeting, of course, for the first meeting of the task force, but at least for their second one, Would you all like to discuss those priorities now, or would you want to wait for those priorities for us to share it for their second meeting? Because right now our meeting is before their first meeting, so maybe it'll be before our next meeting will be before their second one.
But they're going to work at, I just want to say that they're during their meeting, one of the items on the agenda is to discuss their meeting date and time. We have to see when everybody's available. And the reason, and Mark Hildebrand is going to be on the meeting also, so we can coordinate everybody.
Awesome. Okay.
So the
Well,
next meeting could not be after yours. Just saying it could possibly be on another day.
Okay.
Right. I guess one of the things is we do have lists, not from this current group as such, but I mean, there aren't listed priorities that have been kind of gone over a number of times. We could look at it and see if there's anything in addition to put forward, but I think it is important that we're asking, I mean, they're being asked to review the entire code.
Mhm.
So there might be some things to do sooner than later. We might be hindered because the reality is many of these things may not take effect until not the next election, but the 2029 election. I guess the only priority that I would say is it would be great if we had the fair election laws component of code done first from a legislative standpoint to get passed through, because that will be the same whether it's a partisan or a nonpartisan, or it changes the cycle and some of those other types of things. But that's already listed as something that's a priority. So I don't know if you've had the chance to look at the priorities that were sent out before, but those are there and also in the work session. So
Yeah, so I used what I did, and maybe Debbie, you may have done this as well. But what I did is I used what you had sent to us from the Charter Commission. I used that as a platform, and I added additional points to it. So I was thinking that maybe I could share my screen. I don't know if that's allowed, but I could share my screen to show you all that document and what I added to it, so that you can see the difference there. I did not take away from anything that was originally on the document. I only added to it and also made sure the formatting was consistent throughout. That's all I did. I did not take away from anything from the former one. So I was going to share my screen, which is,
Okay.
if you all are okay with that, I was going to share my screen, which is right here. Okay.
Yeah, because we hired them, or we chose them for their experience. And if we give them the information that Eileen had mentioned, that's their job to go through it and glean it and then tell us what their recommendations are to do.
Exactly.
But they don't have all that information yet.
correct.
Can y'all see my screen?
I
can
can't.
see it, but I can't see the full page.
It's just a little hard to read.
Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Okay, this is what I'll do instead. Here we are. Okay. Is that better for reading, Debbie? Is that closer?
Yes, that's
Okay,
good.
Perfect.
I'm like at the eye doctor.
So what I did was I titled it based off of what that focus was. So if we're talking about voting generally, I know Eileen, what was originally on that document was determining the election cycle. And so all of these are the same as it was right here, keeping the same. It was the option 1, the option 2, which was holding it the same as our federal presidential primary and generals. And then we had the option 3, which was we decide prior to 2025 and follow potential schedules outlined above. So this was all the same from the original document. So there isn't much change there. And maybe you all can, of course, scroll with me on the original document if you like. And then that second bullet was determine if Annapolis will run partisan versus nonpartisan elections. What I added here is this part here. I added, so if it remains partisan, there will be no change. Open primary, comma, and or independent / unaffiliated votes freely, which would allow for independent and unaffiliated voters who are not with the party to choose whichever party they'd want to vote in, or any party members, so Republican and Democrat can vote in each other's primaries. I think that should be a distinction because, of course, you have a lot of party members and leaders who wouldn't want a person who's of an opposing party to vote in the primary. So this allowing the task force to really research what would be the best method for that, and also outlining that there are 2 different ways to do it would be, I think, a good addition. So I did add this part right here.
I guess I'm confused. I don't understand what the difference is, because an open primary is everybody can vote based on who they want.
Yeah, so that's correct. So, but there's also in an open primary defined as by what the task force would define that by, or however we decide an open primary is. Not all open primaries have to be the fact of any party member voting freely in another party's primary. So what I added this part here just to add the idea that maybe instead of it being just any party member, if independents or unaffiliated who are not belonging to a party, that 30+% not belonging to the party, was able to then vote in the primary. I think that's what our goal is, to encourage independent and unaffiliated to have the opportunity to vote in the primary. So that's why I just highlighted that part there.
But that's what an open primary is.
Yeah.
An open primary is all registered voters vote freely.
I agree. So I added that there, as I mentioned, to just emphasize that it would be the independent / unaffiliated voters getting the ability to vote in the open primary.
Okay.
And then we have these
Could
2
that be
are,
highlighted, please? Because I
oh,
think,
sure, absolutely.
I mean, as you go through this, I guess, to me, this is the 2018 report. And I think that if we want to add something, we should keep it separate. And so we shouldn't just rename it the 2023 report. Right. If you want to put in some things to differentiate or to add, I think we should pull out anything that we agree or that's different. And then we say that's the 2023. So, I mean, that's fine. I think that, like I said, an open primary is all registered voters, but that's fine, but I would pull it out.
Absolutely. And so I named it, are you talking about the name up here, the 2023?
Yeah, I think that what we do is, this is the 2018 this is a separate document. So if we want to say,
Right,
in reference to the 2018
right here,
document, the 2023
right here.
group is now adding these additional comments.
Okay. So I do like the idea of the highlight as well. And I, of course, named this for my reference. This was my document. I figured that it would be good then to share it and us decide together what would be helpful for the task force. So the other part, of course, the other option, second option is the same, just becoming nonpartisan. That nothing changed there. This part about determining ballot options for future elections, we had the traditional method remain the same. The hybrid method remained the same. The vote by mail remained the same. And the option 4 remained the same. So nothing changed there except for this part here. And what I also, the reason why I put certain wording here is for someone who, I know we have experienced members, or at least people who are familiar with elections and election law, but really just for our understanding of what it would do and how that would change the election. So that's why some of the wording may be the way that it is. But for voter registration, I did add this, expanding the electorate. This is what I did add. And I'll highlight that, because of course there wasn't anything titled expanding the electorate. So with that, voter registration, I'm having same day voter registration and or with the similar format that you all had, the and or automatic, which is, of course, I know you mentioned we would work with the county and or state to figure out how we could do that with our city rolls. But if it was automatic, option 1 saying all city residents, as we have in Tacoma Park, in Hyattsville, the non-citizen voting, which I put in parentheses, e.g. tax-paying residents voting. I only put that there for the understanding that of course you pay your taxes, you should be able to vote. And then we have option
Can I make a
2.
comment about that, Keanu? I believe that was voted down. That was a 2016 referendum that I don't believe passed.
The same day voter registration,
But not the same day, the non-citizen voting,
The citizen, yeah.
the non-citizen voting.
right? And I'll be
Said-
honest, I'm not in favor of including that. So I mean, if you're going to get into some of these nitty gritties, then we need to really go through and
No,
decide.
that's what I wanted. That's why I did this. I did this for the
But-
conversation because
but I-
this is important.
Okay, it's just, I wasn't, okay, we can go through. And
Now-
can I give feedback for some of this also, just because you haven't been through an election yet?
Absolutely. Yes, Eileen, I'm telling you right now,
okay.
this is all for conversation.
All right, so let me tell you some of the reasons why they're not included, and I expect they're going to look at same day. The challenges with voter registration is it's not working with the county, it is the county. They do the voter registration. And so many of the limitations on the municipal elections have to do with finances in terms of how much it costs and also the need. We actually went back and looked at same-day voting for Anne Arundel County during the presidential elections. Do you know how many same days we had? Registrations? Want to guess?
50, 100, 1,000.
Same day in Annapolis.
In Annapolis.
This was
Maybe
in a presidential election. There were 5.
5.
Okay. And so there is a cost having to do with the same day election. The other thing in terms of also early voting, again, it's not just financial, but it is also what is the need for it. And that can also be very challenging because we are a fairly small group that's doing it. Early voting actually, interestingly enough, and this is just for overall education, is almost like running another election. So for example, the machines that are used in early voting are additional machines. So you're basically running an early vote, you're running one election over a number of days. And again, is there a need for that? Again, I think we also want to take into consideration the commission will take into consider, or the task force will take into consideration how things have changed so much if mail-in options are going to change, because the number of people that are even voting in person was significantly down because of the mail-in option. So early voting, are you providing something that's necessary? There have been some indications that when you do early voting, you're not necessarily increasing the number of people.
Right.
You're just increasing the time in which they can vote.
Exactly.
And
You don't necessarily get increased numbers. So
I've
I'm
seen
just
that too.
putting that out, and this might be something. So that's why I'm a little hesitant to say from our perspective that we want to, I mean, we're not necessarily saying sanction it. I don't think you're asking us to do that, but I get a little nervous when we start putting in some specifics. I mean, I think expanding the electorate, it's really about it. I'm not sure it does expand the electorate. I think we can certainly look at ways in which, voter registration could be the overall topic and ask them to look at same day early voting. Lowering the voting age is not really something that I think that I don't know, Ashley might be able to say if we can technically do that, but the reality is too, that we live in the state of Maryland and we have to kind of keep that in mind as far as what's going on at that level.
We can't lower the age of voting.
Right.
okay. Are we able then to also look at, because what I put at the top of here is refer to laws passed in Tacoma Park and Hyattsville. And that's because in those areas, they have most of this that I've added to this list. And I would like to hear your thoughts on why we shouldn't allow for non-citizens to vote. I know in 2016 it did not pass, but I would love to hear your thoughts as to why you don't believe that even if we had another referendum in the new age of today, that it wouldn't pass, one, but two, why why that's something we shouldn't be pushing or advocating for. And also, aside from that, when you did hit on a point that for early voting, it would allow more people to have more options. And so when you're talking about voting and expand the electorate, having options, I would say, is always one of the best ways for people to say, okay, I can't go that week, but oh wow, I get to go this week. I'll go this week. I have a babysitter tonight, I can go. So even if I know it may be costly or what have you, but our job and our focus is about increasing voter interest and turnout. And so every method we could possibly do that, we should at least include it for them to research it. This is not us saying this is what we want. This is us just sharing, hey, this is what you all should research and look into and see if this is something that we can do in the city of Annapolis.
And I believe that they will do that, but I believe it needs to be based on research. And I have not seen the research to show that increasing that early voting increases the total number of votes. It increases the opportunities, but again, it depends on the goal. I don't think that's something we have to get into right now. I think that's for the, and I don't think that's something that we're in a position to be saying to this task force. We can just say, these are, this is something we want you to look into, but not give them what our personal opinions are or what even our opinion is as a board, because that's what we hope that they do. And again, base it on current practices and base it on research. And again, you've been referring to Tacoma Park in terms of the non-citizen voting, but I do believe, and I will check it, I do believe that it did not pass. So referring them to a 2016 referendum that didn't pass, I'd rather them come up, perhaps find the information of a place that did adopt it. And how's it going? How is it working? Are they going to continue it? Any of these things, whether it's that or not. So
in 1992, the city of Tacoma Park passed a charter to allow non-citizens the right to cast their ballot in municipal elections. Everything I added to this was based on research as well. I researched through many of articles. I didn't link those.
I'm referring to the 2016 citation that you had sent earlier. So I'm happy to go back and look at it. And if I'm wrong, I'll be the first to admit it. So again, going back to what we're doing for this group, I think we can ask them to look at it, but I don't think we should be making decisions or expressing a preference as far as a group. But that's just, again, my opinion.
Okay, and 16 and 17-year-olds have been able to vote since 2013 in the city of Tacoma Park. I met with the mayor of Hyattsville as well, and she is actually who encouraged me as being on the Board of Supervisors of Elections when we created this task force to share these thoughts with them, because she said that as the Black mayor in Hyattsville, she mentioned how they were one of the first, of course, alongside Tacoma Park, to pass these types of election reforms. And so, yeah, we'll move forward. I don't, and let's not, we don't have to share this with them. Let's say we're signing off as our focus.
Can I clarify something? Keanu, I have a question.
For sure.
There's a difference between 16 and 17-year-olds being registered to vote. They can be registered to vote in the state of Maryland. They cannot vote until they're 18. So in Hyattsville, are you saying that they vote at 16?
So that is what I'm saying.
Yeah, because state law did change to allow 17-year-olds to register, but you still vote at 18, or you can vote the year you turn 18. So yes, you can still vote, I think, when you're 17, if you're turning 18 that year.
Well, what this says is that who can vote in the city of Tacoma Park elections for mayor and city council? Every resident of the city of Tacoma Park who will be 16 years of age or older on election day is eligible to register and vote in city elections.
Okay. Well,
this is on their website.
Then ask them. Go ahead and ask.
Yeah. I included everything that had some research behind it. And as I mentioned a minute, much of what I added was also based off of feedback I received from people in office and also just regular resident citizens who would like us to reform our election law.
Yeah. And I know for years, Tacoma Park has allowed non-citizens to vote. And that's been quite a while, which I guess was what, 1993 or something. But what's unusual is I believe they, and now maybe does Hyattsville allow non-citizens to vote? Because nobody else has jumped on board with that. They were the first one a while back, and they're still the outlier. All these other 157 cities in the state of Maryland, and we still have one and now maybe two who sit next to each other in the same county to do it. So that's a question, is why have not more cities jumped on board with this?
Well, we know why. I think it's quite clear. There's a tension between our citizens, our residents, and those who view non-citizens. There should never be a reason for us to deny the right to vote to people who are following laws and also support our economy. I mean, there should never be. And so when I look at Hyattsville, for example, again, yes, they have allowed non-citizens to vote since 2017.
Well,
But
let's
that's
let the
still a
task-
long time. I mean, it's still
We are moving forward as
very,
well.
it's still very unusual to do that. And it's been many years, and more still aren't doing it. But I think with all this, with the early voting and the no excuse absentee ballot and all of this, we do all want everybody to vote, but no matter what we do, everybody are not going to vote. There's just so many people apathetic. There's just so many people, no matter how many days and how easy we make it, no matter how many times we change, the age or the requirements, there still is going to be a lot of people who are not going to vote. And I've seen it. I've applauded all this initiatives to get more people to vote, and it's not happening. So, and there is a manpower and a financial cost to this.
Well, and there's a
We're struggling on
legislative
both of
cost,
those.
right? So one comment also in terms of option, well, again, I'm saying we shouldn't get into the nitty gritty. If we're going to add that, then I'd like to add the option that, which has also been in some areas, is that property owners have the option to vote.
Oh, wow. Okay. Where should I put that?
Again,
Under-
I don't think we need to I think we just say, look at various, I mean, I don't like the idea of the options. I think we should just look at voter
I only-
registration,
Yeah, I
ask
follow
them to look at
automatic.
same day,
This right here.
automatic, and
that's
keep
why.
it simple and let them get into the nitty gritty. Because otherwise we could sit here and have a discussion about all sorts of things.
Yeah, we don't want to feed them. We don't want to do a push pull where
Exactly.
we're guiding someone. They were hired for a reason, and they need to have kind of a clean slate. But they're still going to be given a platform. They're going to be given the foundation, and then let them come up, tell us what they have found that will work with our small city, and whether it needs to be voted on by the electorate, voted on by the council. How can some of these things happen?
I agree completely. And I will go back to when I definitely did not press as much as I definitely was going to on the member selection. But when we had that conversation about that, we mentioned that we're going to use our power and our voice to support the task force and also share our thoughts from the feedback I received and from the work that we've been doing thus far. And so everything I've added to this is not just from my own mind. It's from, of course, it's from my mind, but it's from others as well. And so this is just for us to put it out there and for us to allow the task force to do whatever it would like to do with it. But I do believe that we should at least give them an understanding or an idea of what has been done already and what we could move towards. Because you're talking about looking at the whole code, these are some points in that code that they're going to have to reference or talk about.
Right.
And so,
Again,
why not?
this is the first time you're presenting this to us. So,
Because I
this
was
is a lot to,
we're not allowed to
to
share
pull through. So,
we weren't allowed to share it via email. And so today I figured I would just put it up for us to go through it together and decide together and for us to just talk through like a work meeting in a way, just to take some time and do that since it is on our agenda and we won't have a say with what this task force except through you, Eileen. And so with us having this conversation, you will be able to vocalize our thoughts. We can be able to send this in our memo and we'll go from there. And I agree too that we should wait for their feedback, what they would like to see happen. That was why we even selected these members, why this task force was brought forth. It was based off of our idea and in the city council and of course our city, the idea that we need to look at election laws and we need to better them. And so these are some focuses, and let's move forward if y'all are okay with it. And take away whatever you feel is best. This is just for us to have the conversation because it's necessary, especially as we think about elections for the future. It's necessary for us.
Can you send this to us?
Yeah, indeed.
And then we can digest it, and then we can follow up on it next meeting. Because the task force, their first meeting is going to be more housekeeping.
Yeah. And the reason why I didn't share, of course, is because the Open Meetings Act. Is it okay if I share it, Regina and or Ashley? Is it okay if I share this document via email, which is what I originally wanted to do? I'll share this document via email as well after we kind of skim it, and then everyone could just take the time, add whatever comments, and we could just add, maybe you scrap it, you just add your own little tidbits to it. But this is what I felt would be good for us to work from, like a working document.
You could definitely share via email.
Okay.
I think if each person adds their own comments individually and there's no discussion, it's just these are your comments that you would like presented, that's fine.
Okay.
But there can't really be a discussion of the comments, if that makes sense.
Until our meeting. All right.
So like you can share it and everyone can add their own individual thoughts at their own time. Okay. And then that would be it. Unless you want to discuss it at a meeting again.
Thanks. Thank you. Is it okay? And if y'all emails that we use, if that's all right, I'll just share the document to those emails that y'all use, because I know Gmails are better sometimes because it's a Google document. But I'll quickly kind of go through the rest of this, and then we could just move forward with the last part of the agenda. But I did add for voter education candidate information. They send in the mail for the primary and the general and high school. They send biographies of candidates, which are from the city's website. They send biographies to all the voters, so it could either be included in a notice to voters about the election coming. It could be included in the ballot if we're doing the mail-in ballots to everyone. But this is just an idea for them to look into. How can we incorporate, or if they want to push this forward, how that would be incorporated.
Well, there was a very increased communication plan that was utilized the last time using social media. And all of these primary candidate biographies are available on the website, and people have been sent to that, have been notified, and they're posted. So that's kind of, those two items are essentially being done, unless you're talking about doing separate mailers, and that's really up to the candidate.
Yeah, I'm thinking that the city, when or the board, whenever we send out notices to voters, including their ballots or what have you, we would say these are the candidates that you can choose from, and these are the biographies that they've provided to us, to the city on the website. And what that does is, for those who don't have internet access, or for those who they're getting the ballot for the first time, for those who they didn't even know that they were going to be voting, but the ballot automatically came to their home and they get to see these options, whether you're whatever party you may be from. I think that gives them a little saves a little time as well. Although these bios may not have everything about a candidate, but because the candidate gets to choose these bios that goes on the city website, they would be pretty much doing their best to persuade the voter. So that's, I think, where that.
Okay. Well,
yeah, Madam Clerk.
I think
I just want to say, during the last election, we did send the name of the candidates out, but as for bios, everybody didn't submit a bio, so we couldn't really require it. So.
And the challenge with that too is, then are you sending out, suppose you send out a bio that is incorrect or has been inflated, or is very slanted politically. Then you're putting the city in the position of editing or going back. It's
researching. Yeah.
So what
and
about
the cost.
What about those bios you put on the city website? Are those vetted? You know, do we just put them on there based off what people send in? Or I believe is there no criteria that we would say, okay, you provide your name or your, what does that have on the website? Because I recall my bio and others' bios, it was pretty open and
Yeah,
honest.
we did have bios on the city's webpage if they were submitted to us. We did upload them. But then after a certain point, people wanted us to change it. We don't have the manpower to,
Right.
Once we set the website, we had a deadline cutoff. If you didn't submit by that date, we didn't take the
Right.
bio.
But we did have some candidates that got started adding political options into their biographies. So there's two issues. One is the biographies and the other is mailing those out.
Mhm.
So I think
And-
when the city mails that out, I mean, that's a campaign. To me, that's a campaign
Promotion, what have you. I
that
can
they
see
should be promoting their candidate, not us.
But everything we send, if you want any information on any of the candidates to run for the election, we sent the link so you can go and find it. And you can look up anybody you wanted to, because there was a link to the webpage, but we didn't send out anything, based on every single person, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, yeah. Absolutely.
And I don't think the candidate information is vetted, because I think some addresses, I think in the past, some candidates put down an address that they don't actually live at. So that's confusing as well, because I know they're not living there, but that's what's on their bio, or that's what's on the city website, or that's what they put on their finance forms. And yet it's really not their address.
But
So yeah, you open yourself up to a lot of changes, I guess. Maybe they moved, or that's part-time address, or
the only place that their official address is required is on a certificate of candidacy.
Yeah.
If they have a campaign headquarters or a PO box for their campaign, that's fine. But the certificate of candidacy contains all the information we verified through the county to say that.
Their candidate addresses are verified
on the certificate of candidacy, yes.
Yeah, and then the city will verify what they put down.
Yes.
When we send info about these candidates, do we put, you said we put their links to their website or something?
No, we put the link to the city website on any election material so that you could go there. If you looked at the, when we had the specimen ballot at the bottom, there was a link to the city's website. If you needed any city information, it would show, who the board members are. And if you hit the link for the primary candidates, it would show you who they were, or the general election candidates. It would show you that also. You just have to do work.
Request paper copies.
Yes.
So if people don't have computers or access, they can request paper copies.
Okay, and even if, I think bio can be used loosely here. Even if it was just the information of who the candidate, I know you said their name, this is just for them to look into, by the way.
Right. Well, they also get a sample ballot.
Yeah.
So
and that comes
how
from
on the state website, if you're running for a state office, they'll allow for you to put your email, they'll allow for you to put your website, they'll allow for you to put all these different things.
We don't use the state system in that way.
Yeah,
exactly. Elections,
exactly.
we weren't allowed to use it in that way.
Exactly. So, so pretty much just a little extra for the voter. That's where that's coming from. Okay, moving forward. So I'll highlight that part, just so that we know that part there is a little, that one brought up more question. Okay, recounting ballots. I know that there's a cost affiliated with it. And I know when we're talking about monies, it's always a conversation. This is just for us to have, to think about it and for the task force to look into it. I'm gonna keep saying that. The option one, it remains the same. The petitioner pay the cost. Option two, and of course, this is all consistent with the options that were provided in the original document. Option two is no cost. The city pays the full cost per the board's decision to process. Option three, no cost upon a set determined margin of difference. And I say this because we've experienced here, even in our city, for this part right here, with votes being within a margin of 5. And so the city of Annapolis pays the full cost per the decision to process, the board's decision to process, because in the code it mentions that the board is the one who really determines that whole process due to votes being within the determined margin of difference. So it could be 5 votes or less. Okay, let's move forward. We'll pay that amount. 10 votes or less. Okay, let's move forward. We'll pay that amount. 25 votes or less. Okay, let's move forward. We'll pay that. We'll pay the amount to do the recounting of those ballots. Or option 2, which is that you split the cost with the, option 4, which is that you split the cost with the city of Annapolis, depending on that margin of difference. And this is just the idea to kind of help those candidates, one, who are very close, maybe they're first time candidate, maybe they're not, but it really helps for us to consider or take into consideration that these candidates who maybe in that vote, maybe in that margin of that 5 votes. And I think it would be helpful for the city at least to support in some way those candidates.
Well, most recounts for ballots are based on percentages. I certainly favor that the recounting of ballots, or just that section needs to be looked at, but I would not get any farther than saying that section needs to be looked at, because there's actually more problematic areas to that section than this part of it. So again, I think we should stay away from getting into the nitty-gritty. It's the process, and that includes it. It's a very vague section of the code, and it doesn't really clarify it. But again, I would be in favor of saying recounting ballots is a priority. Since we've just been through it, needs to be looked at more closely. Again, we're asking them to look at the entire code, which this is part of. But if you want to make that a priority, I would be in favor of that, but not getting into anything specific.
Okay. The next part would be vacancies. I know that we have to clarify alongside what you just mentioned about the recounting ballots in the code, the vacancy portion, clarifying the language on the requirements and the timeline. So I did see here that it could remain the same, and the central committees or the political party to which the nominee belongs to gets to, of course, select that person and move forward in the process. Or in the same light of us understanding that voters should have the option to choose regardless, especially because a day can change a lot or a moment can change a lot. And so a special election must take place. I know it's costly with a date set within a determined amount of days. In the code, they use 30 days for the vacancy. So these are just some thoughts about the vacancy announcement, how long candidates would be able to file/apply, where that deadline would be, and then the date of the actual special election, if it were to be a special election. And maybe we don't get into the nitty-gritty. And Eileen, please, when this document is sent, feel free to reformat it in a way that is based off your sentiment, your thoughts of what you said about not being too specific in things. But
I think just say clarified language on requirements and timeline. And also, just as a point of order, vacancies is actually handled in, I forget what section. I'm thinking of something different with the charter. There's a vacancy.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I know.
It's in the, is it in the charters?
Yeah, they say refer to the charter and the code. It does say that.
So again, we're asking them to look at everything. So my assumption is they're going to look at that too. But
yeah, that's a look at. I know.
Well, you're saying you want it as a priority.
Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
It would be important to look at this part specifically. Now, the finances. So with fundraising, just thinking about whether or not it would be a right to increase the amount that people can donate to a candidate. I'm not saying, okay, let's increase the amount. This is just for conversation purposes and, research purposes. But right now it's 1,000 for alderperson and then 2,500 for mayor. So I'm possibly just raising that amount. I didn't put any amounts in this. This is the one part I didn't specify the amounts, because I think, of course, how can we determine that? This is just for thought. And then also raising money while in office, remaining the same, or doing something similar to what we do in the Maryland General Assembly, that you're not allowed to raise money while in session.
Again, I think this is part of the fair election laws, which I think is already identified as a priority.
I don't understand cannot raise money while in session. I mean, the General Assembly has a 90-day session, but Our city council is year round.
Yeah, we do go on vacation.
Oh,
Did you, Madam Clerk, what did you?
it's 11 months.
I think you're muted.
I mean, what is our city council
She's muted.
session? You're
Good
on
night.
mute, Regina.
I was saying the city council is elected for 4 years. So you're saying that you don't want them to to have any type of fundraisers for 4 years?
No, no, I'm not saying you shouldn't. It's just a thought of saying, is this something that would even work in our city, where they wouldn't be raising funds until election season came around, the same way we can't promote ourselves until election season came around.
Well, what is election season for our council?
Exactly. When does election season happen? When the filing begins.
The filing begins and for your next filing is in August of 2024. 1 year.
Right.
The
But you're not-
certificate can be filled out 1 year prior to the deadline.
Right, but you don't have a campaign until you have a certificate of candidacy. At the
Right.
state level, I believe that if you are, for instance, a losing candidate, you have to close out your report. You can't carry it over. So again, these are nitty-gritty specifics that the commission can look at, and I believe fair election laws is already part of the priorities, which includes fundraising and all of the reporting and limits. And there's fairly
It's just
robust
that
part at the
that
state
2A, I mean, resembling the Maryland General Assembly, the Maryland General Assembly doesn't match up with the city council.
And that doesn't.
So that's to me is very confusing.
Okay, so what I can do here, and I'm glad you said that because I actually wasn't certain if that would make sense either. I'll just get rid of this.
Yeah. I mean, we have a year-round council. It's not a part of the year. So you can't, it's not like they're ever out of session. I mean, Regina hit it the closest by saying, you can't raise money unless you have filed a certificate of candidacy, and you can do that 1 year prior. That's the closest, closest thing.
Exactly. I like that too. Okay, I think we're almost done here. We have campaign fund reporting. I know it's been an issue with the late fees. So of course, I know we already talked about this being a priority for them as well, that this would most likely be a priority for them. But closing your account, the donation of our remaining funds with proof of no conflict, of course, because I know there was an issue with sending it to nonprofits and things like that, but just looking into where else could our money go? If you run for office, could it go to another candidate? Could it go to an organization, a community organization? Where could the money go? So just looking into that, as well as, of course, there's a donor disclosure requirement that we talked about before. So looking at what those requirements could include, what updates could be made, political action committees, and that would also go hand in hand with if we raise the amount of money that can be raised by a candidate.
What's a donor disclosure requirement? I recall hearing about that.
So when we had to make sure that the organization was
That's a political action committee.
No, I gave that as an example because oftentimes in politics you hear, oh, are they getting money from these PACs? Are you getting money from these PACs? So I just put that there to kind of have us think about what that would mean if we did have a disclosure requirement, or what those updates would have for donors who donate to campaigns. And so the next part was term limits. I know this is a very touchy topic, but this has also been a part of conversations. So clarifying language in the code on consecutive versus total. Right now it's consecutive back to back, or is it just an all? Could you run for mayor now and win and be elected for 2 terms and wait 8 years and go back and run for mayor again? Of course, right now we know that that's most likely not really happening, but we need to clarify that in the code. And yes, Madam Clerk.
You can run 2 terms for mayors and skip a term and run again. It's only 4 years.
Consecutive. Yep. We're talking about 8. If you do 8 years, four back to back, and then wait 4 years, then come back and run again.
Exactly.
Yep. So and
You
maybe
can-
just
You could actually do 4 years and skip a year and come back and run.
yeah.
Mhm.
And so I think whether it is not having limits at all, whether it's making it longer terms, whatever it may be, I just think this would be a good area for us to share with the task force that they should prioritize looking at that and clarifying the language. Should we allow for a mayor to have 16 years, even if there's a break of 4 years, to come back and be mayor again? If the people voted for him, then or her or what have you, voted for them, then yeah. But this is just for them to take a look at here. The last part is the rest of funding, the primary and the fair election practices. This is all what was already on there. And of course, it's straightforward, no details, no thoughts or anything. So I understand what you were mentioning too, Eileen. The last part was just, is it required to have this task force? It's not. I mean, this was a piece of legislation that was brought forth and passed. Not a mayor can decide, or whomever decides to bring a piece of legislation forward, or the board could decide to work with the city council to make this happen. But should this be something that is within our system to happening every 6 years or 8 years or 10 years, like we have for our redistricting?
So can you, all through this, when you put different options and when you put different numbers of, of years or whatever next to it, these are just ideas from your head or maybe from research, but
Yep.
there could be
A
lot more.
A lot more.
And like early voting, you had 7 days, and I'm like, well, now we had 3 and then 8 and then 10, and now you're choosing 7. Well, what about 2 and what about 4? And so you only had 7 in there, but there's just a lot of numbers in here. And even with the 4 options for term limits, well, there could be more than 4 options, and then you're sticking with 4-year terms, and there could be 2-year terms, there could be, all different kinds of things. So it's a little confusing because you're coming up with, with these options with numbers and amounts in them when maybe it's best just to let the committee look at the subject matter, look at the main idea, and then let them work with it. I know you're giving examples. I mean, certainly you're not giving them choose one of these.
Yes,
You're giving them examples, but I don't know, it's just a little confusing right now for me until I wrap my head around it all.
Okay. So as I mentioned before, these are all examples, and these are all examples. These are all examples.
And these are examples that you've decided to put in.
These were examples from the original document.
I
So
see.
all these options, as I said, I did this format because of the original document.
Okay.
And so I put options that are common around cities. I put options that have been in conversations.
Got
I
it.
put options that I think will just initiate conversation and get people talking and looking into it and
Okay.
thinking about it. So that's why that's there.
Yeah.
So as I mentioned, none of this is concrete, of course. We just is not, okay, they're taking this on, they're gonna make it happen. It's just for us to provide some support and thoughts, and just for them to get some examples as well. I'm gonna share this with both of y'all emails so that y'all can work from this as well. Okay.
Because I think having MML come in and speak to them is really important. And, that offer has been made to them or will be made to them.
And Jared DeMoranis has said that he's willing to work on the fair election.
Wonderful.
And I think though also it's important for consistency. And so there is something to be said for our municipal code to be somewhat consistent with the state. So if it's different or it varies too much, it can be very confusing to voters. So there's something to be said for that. There's also something to realize that if we skew too much from what the state is doing,
we're setting precedent.
It may.
I don't know. I see.
I'm just saying I'm just saying just some practicalities. One of the benefits of the last two elections is that, there's Kalani, we have been able to utilize the County Board of Elections. So that is also something, parts of keeping a balance in terms of pros and cons.
Sure.
So if for instance, if the city of Annapolis decided to go to nonpartisan elections, the city itself would have to run the election as it is now. And that's something that might, I mean, I'm not saying that's good or bad or make an opinion, it's just the reality. And so the reality can be, and that's something that has to be weighed in this, and that's up to the commission. And the commission's just going to be making the recommendations, and it still would need to be by the city council. So I think we just really need to try to also stay somewhat neutral and certainly give them some priorities, but not too many options, and just let them do their work. And I think, I don't know if Hyattsville's on the list of resources. I know that Tacoma Park, that Board of Elections, is on the list of resources.
Okay. So I just sent you all the document. Should I send it to you too, Madam Clerk, and Ashley, just for is that something I have to send to y'all as well?
I'm sorry, could you repeat that?
Sure. Is there something that I have to send to you all too as well for
You have to send it to the city clerk because she's your staff liaison and she has to keep track of all your materials.
Okay.
It's up to you whether you want to send it to me.
Give me that choice. I'll send it to everybody.
Okay. Thank you, Ashley.
Thank everybody. Okay.
You said.
And Eileen, please, if there, whatever you have to, now that it's okay to share it, please feel free to share that with us to take a look at, to get an understanding of what you had developed and brought together.
Well, I think most of what I've put on this list, you all would have received when you started last year. If not, I'll send it again, but I believe, because you obviously got the priorities from, you have that. So.
Okay, if it's the same thing, whatever you think.
Okay, and then I can send you, I mean, the summary guide you can get by going to the State Board of Elections website.
But you didn't really come up with much of this. This has already been sort of developed and you're just putting some resources together for them.
This is a list of materials to send them.
Okay.
The priorities, the summary guide, things that have been synthesized in the past. We've had meetings after the elections, kind of best practices types of things.
Okay.
And work sessions. So I'll send that out also.
Do you have a Gmail, Eileen?
I do.
Okay.
It's the same one. It's just
with
Gmail.
Gmail,
Don't say it. But it's the same thing about Gmail.
Okay.
And one other item I did want to bring up, and as far as the task force, we had 15 applicants, 14 of which we were able to review. We had 5 that were sent to the
Mayor and council.
to the mayor and to city council, and I appreciate that the mayor and city council went with our recommendations. I would like the opportunity, though, to send letters to the people that were not picked, thanking them for their time in applying and also encouraging them to be part of the process. Unfortunately, that hasn't been done so far, and because there's been some gray areas as far as who's doing what, I'd like to just ask or make a motion that the Board of Elections, since we did receive these applications, that we just send just a basic letter thanking them for applying, and even though they're not weren't selected, we'd like for them to be part of the process. And I know, Kiana, you had drafted some letters before.
Yes,
So I don't know how you all feel about it, but I would have liked.
Kiana you drafted a letter for both the ones accepted and the ones who weren't.
Yep.
Did it go out At
Well,
all
those
to
who-
anybody?
Those who are,
Why we're talking about, because
well, those who got accepted did get a letter. I mean, they were notified, but the people that did not get selected have not been notified.
okay. So if we're all okay with that letter, and Madam Clerk, if you're, I'm not certain if you would do it on our behalf for us, just send that.
I
Yes.
just want to say that we had a conversation about that, and the people who were selected for the committee, if they received the letter, I was not aware of it. I know that they received an email.
Right. Well, that's the
Yeah,
same
but-
thing. Yeah.
Yeah, but I don't know of a letter. And the city, and we talked to Eileen a week ago or so.
Mhm.
And the city process is to notify people who were appointed. And we talked to Hillary Raftovich, and typically we have so many boards and commissions that we do not make it a part of our process to notify people who were not selected. But that's all I wanted to say for the record's sake.
Are we, but we are allowed to though?
If you
It's
make a
not-
motion to do that, that's perfectly fine.
Okay. So there is a motion to do that. Are you okay, Debbie, with?
Well, I just wanted to make a few edits.
Sure.
That's all. I mean, at this point, since it's kind of late, it's really just more a thank you letter, right? A thank you. And this is, we appreciate your application submission. I would just say we thank you for applying. Instead of, just make it more of a thank you application submission. I think, I would just tighten it up a little bit. And then your letter still has, this was still going to the council. You wrote these early enough, Keanu, that it was before they had actually been confirmed. So that part could come out, because this was that we had, we're suggesting others for appointment to the mayor subject to confirmation. Well, that's all been done now. But I like we encourage you to remain active and better our processes. Don't hesitate to keep, that's good. I just would update a little bit. I could do that if you want.
Yeah, please, if you don't mind kind of going through that and updating it according
Okay.
to, we can kind of change that up and send it, as long as it's okay. We're not going to vote on it via email, but we are going to vote. Are we able to say, because we can't go back and forth on this letter, right? We can't say,
Or-
okay, it needs to be changed. We can't go back and forth. But or can we say, or can we move that we will send the approved letter that would be approved via email?
Yeah.
Are we
Or
allowed-
Regina, do you have I know it's not the process to let non-choices know, but do you have a boilerplate thank you, but no thank you letter from the city? Or would you like one from us? Would you like a draft of one for us that you can put on letterhead?
I do not currently have a thank you, but
Okay.
no. Thank you. I just wanted to keep one thing in mind. Okay, so you guys, the applications were submitted to you. And do you think that this may be a discussion for your task force next week to say, we are meeting, we welcome you to participate? Should they send a letter also? I mean, should it be a joint letter? I don't know, but I mean,
Well, that touches on
they're going to have a chair after that meeting.
Right.
So,
Well, that touches on another subject. I mean, it would be nice to get a press release out. Not just letting them know, but let everybody know that that they're going to be meeting and we want to get everyone's participation.
I thought that there was a press release that went out on that.
I don't believe so. Hillary said she was going to talk with Mitchell about it.
And I think she did. I think it did go out. I saw it. And I'll check the city's website, but I think it did under her
I
press
almost
release.
think I saw one too somewhere.
Yeah, it was under Mitchell's press releases. It did go out, I think.
Oh, wait, I think I have it. Let me
With their
see.
first meeting and all?
No, nothing about the first meeting, only that
Well, they can do that later then.
one was selected. Oh, well, how about that? Oh, this was asking for volunteers. And this was the vote. This was the vote for the task force. Oh, here. It was in action. It was in February. It was in the paper February 15th after the February 14th meeting. The council took a step forward in changing how local elections are conducted in Annapolis. 5 people were appointed to a task force that will study election laws, including possibly changing the cycle to align with state and county voting. Council members voted to accept Buckley's recommendation for the task force, even though Ward 2 Alderwoman Karma O'Neill said she was surprised only 2 were city residents, and Gay expressed concern that several appeared to be lobbyists. So that was just in a little.
Right. So that was reporting on the meeting and not necessarily a press release,
Yes.
which we had tried to verify for well, that's a separate issue. Also, Alderman O'Neill, that three of the people on the task force are city residents. The confusion was on one of the applications, in the fill-in, it put in a Westminster or a different address, but it would, so.
You know how I felt about that when she said that, because one of the reasons why.
Right, we had discussed that, yeah. So.
And I don't know if any were lobbyists. I don't know. Are there lobbyists in there? Gay said.
I don't know.
Several appeared to be lobbyists.
Well, I don't know. So again, I'm just asking about, could we put out a letter to the people that didn't get it, just something short and sweet. Thank you for applying. We applaud your involvement in civic, blah, 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 please get involved.
So I'll review. I'll work on that using
So
Kiana's first attempt.
I'll make a motion that the Board of Supervisors of Elections sends a letter to the people that were not selected. A letter or email. It could also be the same email sent to the same, all 10 people. It doesn't, I'm trying to make it easy for Regina too. So my motion is that the Board of Supervisors of Elections sends a letter to the applicants who were not selected for the task force, thanking them for submitting their application and asking them to please continue to be involved in the process.
All right. Is there a second for that?
A second.
Okay, now, and if it's better for you, Debbie, I don't mind editing it since it's the word. I don't mind that either. Okay, all in favor of that letter going out? Of course.
Aye.
That.
Aye.
And thank you.
And then I think we just need to check with Mitchell if a press release went out, or, press release may have gone out and been the basis for this article, but when I read the article, I took it to mean that they were watching the meeting that night. Now, I like the idea of the press release, because when we were doing the voter communications in the last election, getting it out on social media was really helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, you're right. This was just a review of the meeting. So I think a separate press release giving it some attention is worth it. Yeah.
Okay. So we don't have to do any motions or anything like that. We're just encouraging the city to move forward.
I don't know. Do we need it, Regina?
You've already started the motion. You said I asked for a motion too. So if you get a second and a carry, it'll be a motion.
I second.
Well, is there a motion then to encourage? Because I don't think, you didn't make the motion though, Eileen.
She did.
For the press release? For the press release?
Not for the press release.
We made a motion for the letter.
For the letter.
The letter.
Right.
And speaking of press release, we might have, that might be pushed back a little while we have someone out with a health issue. So we may not get that out as timely as you may want to, but we can get it done if you make a motion.
Okay.
Okay, so I'll make the motion that we ask the city's information officer to put out a press release announcing the first meeting of the task force, and encouraging all citizens and voters to participate.
All right, is there a second to that motion?
I second.
Okay, can I just ask a question?
Sure.
Can I just ask a question? If their meeting is next week, and I don't think that could possibly be done by that time. If you're asking, did the press release go out before the task force first meeting? I don't think it will happen due to a health issue.
All right, well, we could still just say,
She will definitely do it, but it's next week.
okay, all right, well, as soon as possible. Or I mean, as
Okay.
soon, yeah.
All right.
I
All in
mean, if
favor?
it has to be, they say they met on, they
Right.
met on March 22nd.
Here are
their
the
future
minutes
meeting
from
will
that
be such.
meeting. Yeah, I think that would be awesome if it is
So
late. they
I'll
could-
amend my motion to be, I make a motion to request the city information officer to put out a press release concerning the beginning of the task force work and future meetings.
All right. Is there a second for that new motion?
I second.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And that's
Okay.
good because that gives, they've got to meet to come up with their future meetings. So it doesn't have to go out immediately. It just has to go out after their meeting on the 22nd.
Yeah, I think that'd be perfect. Give them all the information they need, our people need. Okay, you all, we're just getting through. It's 8:30. I think this is one of the latest we've been. It's time to wrap this up. Can we please, for the last part of the agenda, we have the BOSE election of chair. Hold on. Oh my gosh. We have 03/23 to 2023 redistricting and revised election wards' boundaries. So that's for discussion first.
I think Eileen requested this, and I can give you the timeline if that's what you were looking for. Okay,
Yeah, I just wanted information on it, or as it would affect the elections.
Okay, well, basically all I can tell you as of right now, it was on the agenda for a first reader on February 13th. It had its public hearing on February 27th, and it's scheduled to be an item on the Rules Committee's agenda on April the 7th.
And is that report available?
I think it is online, yes.
Okay.
And it is also attached to 03/23.
Okay. So my thought had been that the three of us need to be aware of it and to look at it because it can impact the next elections.
Mhm.
And
So-
and that piece of legislation does state that this ward change would go into effect as part of the 2029 election.
I'm kind of surprised they said that because I thought those changes had to occur sooner than that. I mean, it's a federal,
Requirement that we
that's
redistrict.
what I was, yeah, I thought it was a federal requirement because 2029, heck, will be started on the next
Cycle, right.
census. So I'm surprised by that because that's put forth by the Department of Commerce.
The census is every 10 years, so that would be 2030.
Right,
Yeah,
but,
but we're not going to start till 2029. That's halfway.
right. I'm
But
surprised that
It takes a year to do the census.
correct, but I'm just surprised because I thought that the federal government made that deadline, not the city. But I'll look at it. I'll get some more information on it and the other information to find out if we needed to plan to have materials in Spanish.
Yes.
So the elections in 2024,
2025.
2025 for the city, 26 for the state. So 2025, and they start campaigning 2024, and we're in 2023. So it'd be hard to get it ready in a year, I guess. I don't know.
All right, well, I'll look into it and maybe find out. I'll find out about it.
Yeah, I mean, 'cause I think that is true. Okay. Because it is based on our population of now. So our population would change in 6 years from now. So I agree. It doesn't make too much sense.
Well,
we'll
for me, from the practicalities of running the election, it's wondering where the boundaries are. So in terms of polling locations, candidates' addresses, so somebody that lives in, maybe Ward 2 now may end up being in Ward 4. So, it's looking at that. It's also making sure then that the county makes those changes so that people are put into their correct area. We also always have to be aware of areas that are annexed, because they can be annexed and those voters may appear on the county voter registration rolls, but they need to be also put on the city rolls, because the city has wards. It's based on a ward system for voting, but the county has precincts. And so that makes a difference.
And so the Rules Committee on April 7th, the Rules Committee is going to discuss it. And then what, Regina, it goes back to the council after rules?
Yes.
And then do they just vote on it and they vote or amend it?
They can vote or amend it. That's correct.
I'd be really curious to find out if the county, what changes they're going to, I'm just real curious, because I'd like to think that in 2026, the county is going to be using the new census data.
Yeah.
They would have updated all of their precincts. So
I do know that the city works with our GIS specialist, Sean Wampler, so they all work together when it comes to this information. So, but I don't have any more details besides that.
okay, well, I'll see what I can find out.
Thank you. All right, are there any other questions on this matter or any other updates? Okay, let's get ourselves together. We have here the last part of the agenda. All right, it is the selection of our new chair, or our chair for the new term, I should say. I, of course, can't make any motions I could, but is anyone interested in being chair?
Well, I'll make a motion that Keanu Smith Brown continue a second year as chair of the Board of Supervisors of Elections, if he is willing to.
Absolutely. Thank you, Debbie. Wow, yes, I'll be on.
We need a second.
Oh, second, I'm sorry. Second.
That's your true feelings. I lean over that.
It's a late meeting.
Okay, we're about to get off. All in favor of that motion?
Aye.
Aye.
So, aye. Okay, you all. Thank you all again. Thank you so much, Regina. Thank you so much, Ashley and Madeline as well. Y'all, everyone sleep well. Is there a motion? Is there a motion to adjourn this meeting?
Make a motion to adjourn. It's 8:38.
I
Okay,
second.
is there a second?